Now we have our first double passage questions. This is asking about both the chronology resets, so it's not like we can really use that rule here. It just makes it a little difficult. Normally we get these big picture whole passage questions at the beginning, but when it's the double passage, they come at the end. But by now we've answered a lot of questions that were just about passage 1, just about passage 2, so we have a good sense of what each passage is about. But we should also remember that the blurb can help us understand things. So if I go to the blurb here, the first part is not very helpful. Passage 1 is adapted from Abraham Lincoln, addressed to the Young Men's Lyceum of Springfield, Illinois. Okay, so it says that he addressed them, doesn't say what he said in that address. Originally delivered in 1838, yes, great. Passage 2 is from Henry David Thoreau, Resistance to Civil Government. So that is a kind of more important title for our purposes that might tell us a little bit about the passage. And remember, we read a lot about them breaking the law and not breaking the law, so resistance to government fits in with that, breaking the law. So that might be what I think about as I answer this one, is it's resistance to government, or more informally, government, informally, breaking the law or not breaking the law. So that kind of gets rid of choice A for us. Make an argument about the difference between legal duties and moral imperatives. I don't really remember them talking too much about morals. It came up, that kind of language came up once in a while, but it wasn't a primary purpose. The word law came up much more in government, so those things seem to be more important than morality. But B, C, and D all kind of fit with that, right? Discuss how laws ought to be enacted, so there's the law stuff. Advance a view regarding whether individuals should follow all of the country's laws, of articulate standards by which laws can be evaluated as just or unjust. And they definitely talk about just or unjust. So if you're between these three choices, they might all sound very, very similar. However, remember that strong words cause problems for us. We prefer weaker answers. So for example, choice D is very strong, because saying that some laws are just and unjust is one thing, but articulating standards by which laws can be evaluated is another thing. That did not happen in this passage. That would be like if Lincoln said, okay, if a law meets these three criteria, it is just. If not, it is unjust. Or Thoreau created a checklist about what makes a law unjust. That didn't happen. They didn't get into those specifics. They were always talking more like big picture, higher level. They're not saying what the standard is. So that makes this too strong. B has a similar problem. Discuss how laws ought to be enacted and changed in a democracy. Well, they do talk about changing laws and what you should do with a bad law, whether you should break it or change it. But the word how is kind of a strong word for us. They didn't go through the process of how to change a law. They didn't say what the first step is. How do you propose that law? How do you get it through Congress? None of that came up. So how is tough because it's a word that we normally ignore and don't consider as having a great amount of meaning in a sentence. But it does matter here. This is not an instruction manual about how to change laws. It's very much this higher order view about what we should do with laws, how we should follow them or break them and whatnot. So C is right because it's weaker, because it doesn't really get too deep into what the arguments are. It's much more just like they argued about the law, and that's good. We want to take these weak choices as much as possible. So hopefully when you put them next to each other, you see that. But this is a great example of you really need to think of this as an SAT, not just a reading comprehension test. There are specific things like strong words that the SAT puts in answer choices a lot. And in getting in the habit of noticing those is really the key to answering these hard questions. So get in that habit.